Welcome to Trial to Triumph, hosted by Caleb Johnson, the show about leaning into life's constant testing on your way to realizing your biggest blessings.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Caleb Johnson, host of From Trial to Triumph, and I'm very excited to share this conversation with you all today. We have a very, very special guest on today. He has worked very closely with Alex Hormozi, who has written several best-selling books on marketing and just starting businesses, and so he's worked very intimately, and Tim has had some incredible success himself. So, Tim Calise, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Caleb. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, Tim, can you go ahead and give our listeners just a quick background story about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Tim Calise. I was born and raised on the North Shore of Long Island and was lucky enough to escape without a very thick accent. But from my earliest memories, I was the kid who kind of copied what he saw around him. So in middle school, I was the kid at 10, 11 years old who carried a briefcase to school. My dad was in professional services, wore a suit and tie, got on the train every day. And so that paradigm was something that struck me from very early on. And as most sons to their fathers, you kind of follow in their footsteps. But I realized kind of in the high school, right when I got into college, my wiring was quite frankly a little different. I was much more entrepreneurial. I was never kind of traditionally artistic, but the idea of like seeing a problem and then being creative in finding a solution was something that always appealed to me. And so in college, I went to school in Washington, D.C. And for anyone who is familiar with that area, a lot of folks come into the capital city, if you will, and then they leave at night. And so as a college student, it was kind of a ghost town after like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And so a couple of friends of mine and we built a late night snack delivery business that started 3 nights a week and then actually expanded to having a 15,000 square foot warehouse and serving customers all around the Metro DC area. And so kind of I just use that as an example as a kind of way I saw the world. And then I thought I would go into finance and realized after about 6 months, I hated it. I worked at a brokerage firm and we can talk more about like finding your path. But for me, it was something I tried. I just wasn't long for that world. But that introduced me to the world of investment management and hedge funds. This is in the early 2000s. And by the time I joined a small firm, we ended up raising over $300 million by the age of 25. And so was able to use some of these skills that I had in my past life and applied them to kind of a very long-standing industry. But grew that fund, made a market call in 2007 that things were going to get ugly and basically shut the firm down. And then I moved into technology and fitness for about a decade, built a multi-unit 7-figure gym business. And that is what introduced me to the folks at Gym Launch, Alex and Layla Hormozi. And then back in 2019, I was one of the 4 members of the executive team at Gym Launch, which grew a couple of companies underneath the umbrella, grew to over almost 50 million a year in sales. And then we exited those combined businesses about 18 months ago. And so as I sit today, I take this kind of very diverse background and package it up. I think there's something inside of me that's like the David and Goliath, issue, thing of like, I help new entrepreneurs who are trying to go out into battle, do 2 things. 1, condense time, take all this learning that I have and allow them to get the benefits of it. And the second is see around the corners, see what they may not be seeing. And by eliminating those mistakes, we stack the deck in our favor for success. So really excited to be here and see where the conversation takes us.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I have to apologize, Tim. I mispronounced your name starting off, and I just asked you a second before. So sorry about that. Well, Tim, phenomenal background. And you mentioned 2 points right there at the end that I'd love to unpack. But first, growing and raising capital, I'm in that business, and it can be incredibly challenging, especially it's in a cyclical market. It's maybe very ideal at some points and not as ideal and more challenging at other points. And so when you're raising that much capital, especially at a young age, and I'm 25 right now, so I've had some limiting beliefs. So for you, what was that? What was your mindset going through that, and what kind of challenges did you have to overcome through that?
Yeah, so I started kind of the capital raising effort when I was 22, and I think, quite frankly, I was just naive. I didn't know any better, and I think to some extent it was like, why shouldn't I be able to do what it is that I'm trying to do? And for anyone who's kind of in that world, you don't go out and raise $100 million at a time when you have, $1 million under your management. Like it's that kind of quadratic, growth chart where you go from $1 million to 2 to 5 to 10, 25, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think I from a very early point in that process or in that journey, I was naive in the beginning, and then I started to see trends. And these have stuck with me even for the last couple of decades now. And we were able to figure out who our core avatar was in the beginning because we had a very clear value proposition. And to put it briefly, when people think about investment companies, they typically only think about the return that company can generate. We actually were the top rated fund of our class on risk-adjusted return, which meant we were never going to have a up 50% year like some funds did, but more importantly, we would never lose money. And because we basically hit a number of singles consistently, that actually unlocked the big capital investors, because they look at it not as what can you do for me. And I think Warren Buffett has been credited with saying, rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. Mm-hmm. We were in that business, and I kind of fell into it by happenstance. But once we realized that was what we were doing, we sought out investors that resonated with that type of narrative. And so once we started to get a little bit of traction, I've always been the type of person who just needs a little bit of evidence that something's going to work to continue to push. I think there's two types of people, take the little shred of evidence and then push, and the others that are like, I need overwhelming evidence to be able to continue to move. And I think we just stacked those small wins over time, and we're able to achieve something kind of quite remarkable at that time.
That's great. And I've heard it put as well is that everyone expects whenever you're raising capital, you're selling an investment, and everyone is expecting you to say you're going to give a great return, right? Everyone's expecting that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in that business. But if you can really present to investors what your skill is in budgeting and making sure your expenses are in line. So kind of like how you said, Tim, is kind of being that conservative and just hitting just single bases. So, and focusing on the expenses and dialing that in and budgeting, showing investors that you're really good at that is going to go farther than actually flaunting this big potential return. Is that fair?
Yeah. So I'll just to put a little more clarity around it. We had two types of investors that we sought out. The first were high net worth individuals whose retirement savings we managed. And so I went to those folks and said, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you spent 40 years plus or minus building this nest egg. And I take this incredibly seriously. This is actually not about taking it and growing it. It's about growing it with intention, knowing that I'm not going to deliver the message that I've wasted the opportunity, or we've lost this money that you've worked so hard to accumulate over the course of your life. And so that really resonated with folks. People do business with who you are, not necessarily what you do. And so when I was younger, I fundamentally believed that we were the best steward of their money, and that it was kind of me against everyone else, because I didn't think everyone else had the same kind of level of morals, if you will. The second, once we got larger, was we met with institutional investors like insurance companies. And so whether, kind of how that world works is when you pay your premium every month, they don't always need all that money. They go and invest it. But they need to make sure they don't lose it because they have needs for it down the line, right? So that kind of time frame, that time period in between when you pay it and when you need it, we would actually manage those types of that capital. So that's where that kind of capital preservation value proposition was critically important. And to your point earlier, there's all different types of investors. You just have to know who you are. And I think that is a key awareness that no matter what business you're in, you have to know kind of what do I represent to the person I'm talking to, because it's actually not about the product or the service. It's, what is it that enables them to get, where are they trying to go, and how do you participate in that?
I love that. And Tim, you've had some great success growing very successful businesses, especially like you put it, you want to help growing entrepreneurs, and that's your niche, right? That's what you want to focus on. So for those people that are looking to grow and expand their businesses, and not only just grow their businesses, but make it a successful business, what do you say to those people? Like, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I specialize in companies under $5 million a year in revenue, and two other pieces, generally in service or providing some kind of service. And we either refine or install, a recurring revenue component to the business. And I have yet to find a business that we can't do this in. And the idea is, and I personally believe that right now we're in the the attention economy. I fundamentally believe that once we acquire a customer, we need to take that relationship and be able to carry it forward, and not just a one-off sale. And so what I try to do is and under $5 million a year, my belief is that it's all about product, especially when you're starting, especially under kind of the $1 to $2 million range, it's all about product. And the only metric that matters is the number of offers that you make every day. Because what you're trying to do is to accelerate the learning cycle as much as possible, find out what works, tweak, find out what works, tweak it again and again and again. And that is how you build everybody's talking about, how do I build a 7 or 8 figure business? If you can get enough people to buy a product on recurring and they stay and pay for a very long time, getting an 8-figure business is actually not the challenge. The focus should be, how do I build this product and build an experience that people will want to stay and be a part of for a long period of time?
And I'm actually going through Alex's book right now, $100 Million Leads, and he talks about that a lot in that book, like redefining your product and just tweaking little things here and there. Even in your script, right, you can just tweak a little word here, tweak a little word there, and dial that in. Is that something you learn from him, or is that something you learn somewhere else?
Yeah, so I think it has roots in pretty much everything I've done for the last 20 years, which was the idea of, even back to the investment company we were talking about it a minute ago. The way that grew in the beginning was not just we got the first allocation. It was, we would get kind of a partial, like if they had, say, $1 million of retirement assets, they'd give us $200,000 to manage, and they'd see what we did with it. And then I earned the right for the next 200,000 or 300,000. And so they term this kind of the land and expand concept in like software and SaaS businesses. So you make a single sale, and then inside of that sale, the customer's participation with you grows over time. So think of like Salesforce. You make a single sale, we'll try 10 seats. But then over time, that 10 seats becomes 100 seats or 500 seats as they continue to, so you don't have to resell the client. They just continue to integrate you into their world. We did that at Gym Launch. We basically pioneered the 6-week transformation challenge. The idea there is, we in fitness can get more clients, faster results. The faster the results and the greater the experience, the longer they'll stay with us. And so I look at these cycles in just about every business that I work with right now, because there are some tried and true mechanisms and playbooks that you can implement. It's not every instance is not brand new. I can use experience from the past to kind of shortcut the learning cycle there.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. And working with Alex over there and at Gym Launch, what was something that you brought to the team. If I read it right, that you were a pretty intimate group of maybe 4 executives, and then Alex and his wife there. And so, what was something that you'd say one of the most valuable things that you brought to the team that helped with that growth? And then, additionally, what did you learn from working directly beside Alex?
So the second part of the question, I could probably spend a couple of hours on, because it was a unique experience, as probably folks from the outside looking in could envision or imagine. But the first part of the question is the main project that I take a lot of pride in being associated with is within the Gym Launch kind of umbrella. There was the consulting company, which is Gym Launch. There was a physical products company called Prestige Labs, and I oversaw Prestige Labs for the first kind of 6 months or so that I was there. And then we built a machine learning lead gen software called Alan. And Alan was the brainchild of actually somebody prior to me getting there. But it was a project that, quite frankly, was in a state of disrepair. And the idea was fantastic, which was most service businesses say they need more leads, because more leads intellectually means more customers. But that's not exactly true. What happens is, it's actually not about the number of leads, it's about the number of sales appointments and people that actually you're able to engage with. And so think of it like a funnel. We don't need more top of funnel, we need more people at the bottom of the funnel. And that's what we specialized in. And so we built a piece of software which, again, was needed to basically be completely re-underwritten. And I'd never built software before from the ground up. And so I oversaw a 32-person development team, this kind of project that was, as I said, needing some reinforcement. And we took that in about just under 4 months from tatters effectively to go to market in the first over a couple of month period. And then we grew that from 0 to $1.7 million a month in monthly recurring revenue, in less than 6 months thereafter. So, that taught me a number of lessons. It was my first experience with the software, but it was such a red hot pain for gym owners. The idea of working leads, they would have sooner, poked their eyes out with a poker than work leads. It's just that emotional in many cases. And we added tremendous value to that process. And we effectively created a new business model for marketing agencies, which was around shows rather than leads. And so, to answer the second part of the question, I thought I understood what speed meant before I joined Gym Launch. And a small example of that is, and you could probably see this in other organizations, if we were having a conversation now and it was like, let's do this thing, so can you get it to me by next Wednesday or next Thursday? At Gym Launch, it's Thursday at 1:52 Eastern. Can you have it to me? Like, what can you get to me by 5 o'clock? What can we get done by tomorrow? It wasn't just speed for the sake of speed. It was speed to how quickly we can implement and test the idea. What's the smallest component part that we can deliver upon, and then just continue to stack those. And I think that is a lesson that I have carried with me even after the fact.
Wow. I actually haven't heard of that, where, like you said, if you have a deadline and it's next week, okay, what can you give to me in the next day or by tomorrow? And so what does that, what's the benefit in doing that?
Yeah. So at a very basic level, everyone listening probably is familiar with the Pareto's law, right? It's the 80-20 rule. If you think about it, if all you did was the 20% every day that yield the 80%, by eliminating all the extra stuff, you effectively condense your value proposition into everything is high value. So the idea of what can I deliver by the end of the day today captures, with 20% of the effort, I'm effectively getting 80% of the value written down. Then I can deliver it. So done is better than perfect. So I've now delivered, maybe it's, we have an idea. Can you put a whole thing in place by next week? Like, can you give me 5 bullet points by the end of the day today on how you see this working? Can you give me a wireframe? Just, go and write it on a piece of paper. Don't go and do anything fancy. What can you do on a cocktail napkin by tomorrow? And then we can all respond to it. And then we go the next step. Like, great, now you've got feedback. What's the next, 80% of the value in 20% of the work? And I think it's more so than anything a mindset. We are going to be high performers. We attract people who are high performers, and we are ruthlessly seeking out efficiency. And I think if you can do that from a cultural perspective and get the people that resonate with that, it is amazing how much you can actually accomplish. It's like, we would accomplish more in a week than most people would in a year. And wow. that speed matters more than probably anything else. And we make tons of mistakes, but you're going to make mistakes no matter what. So you might as well just make them instead of sitting around hemming and hawing about it. Like, let's go find out where the mistakes are. And then we kind of made these micro investments, so it never felt too painful.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And actually leads into the next question, which is what you alluded to earlier, is how can people condense time?
So I think one is, I was actually having a conversation with a mentor yesterday, which is, I believe that we all kind of need to learn the same lessons. So the question is, how do you learn the lessons? And I think there's two forms. One is you seek out people who have gone where you're trying to go to give you the roadmap so you don't have to do it yourself. I think that's one key piece. And that's a mentor, a coach, a consultant, somebody who can kind of take your hand and lead you down that path. The second is, as we were just talking about, speed of implementation. I think we all need the same amount of learning in that process. It's just how quickly you learn the lesson. So let's just say it takes 100 trials to find out which ads are going to work. The difference being, I want to get all 100 trials done between now and next week versus I'm going to try one today and one tomorrow and one the next day. What I'll do in 7 days, you might take 7 months. We're both learning the same volume of lessons. I just do it faster. And I think that's the speed piece, which is just not being afraid to chunk things down to the component parts and then try and take on a testing methodology rather than we want to be right. It's we want to find out what is right. And if you can do that, you'll win.
Man, I love that. And so I'm always a big component of finding mentors who have what I want, who can teach me, and they're just maybe, let's say, 18 months ahead of me, That's right? It. If I'm starting a new business, let's say a real estate business, I don't want to work with Grant Cardone. I know I'm going to learn a ton of value from Grant, but at the same time, he is 15 years ahead of me, 20 years ahead of me. So if I can just find that person that is just 18 months ahead of me, I can save what might take me 18 months and condense that to 3 months, right? Because they're just going to download into me. And I'm just so giddy about what you said about, condensing what it might take 7 months into 7 days, right? And it's not about finding perfection. It's about just finding what works. And so I think what I'm taking away from that is that it's good to take a step back from your business and actually say, okay, what's the ultimate goal, right? If I want to start a new marketing company, or if I want to start a mastermind, okay, I need to have 50 videos. How can I do those 50 videos in the next 7 days, right? Or whatever that looks like.
I'd go one step closer than that, which is, here are the 50 videos I think I need. Mm-hmm. Who's the person who's going to buy this? Post on Facebook and say, I'm thinking of recording a video today on this subject. If you're interested, completely free, register for my Zoom call. I'm going to do it tomorrow at 5:00. Number one, you get some registration. So you start to tease out who might be, a good fit, so you can nurture those leads. But second, and this is something that I do even to today, which is I don't create content in a vacuum. How many times it's like, I have to set time aside to shoot that video or shoot that course video. Don't set time aside you staring at the camera. Get 5 people. Maybe they'll all pay $10 to be there and be live on camera with you or off to the side, and you can get immediate feedback. This is the idea of, a lot of folks might have heard of a gentleman named Taki Moore. He's a coach of coaches, and he is a big believer in create the vision of what you're building and then build it as you're delivering it. You can actually pre-sell a product that doesn't even exist. So if I came on and said, Caleb, today I'm thinking about creating a program that is how to start a real estate investing business in 7 days or less. And there's 7 steps to it. Does that sound like something that would resonate with you? Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Fantastic. I've got 5 complimentary spots, completely free. And all I ask you to do is for the next 7 days, join me at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to go through each of the 7 pieces. So all I ask is 2 things. One, your feedback, and second, if you like it, a testimonial. Sound fair? And you'll go, yeah, of course. You're like, awesome. Module 1. Caleb, how did that sound? That was really good. I like this. I didn't like this. Awesome. Great. We're still, it's filmed and it's done. It's in the can. You can always redo it.
Yeah.
But now you're already creating momentum out of something that you didn't create in a vacuum. And I think that is why so many people fail is I'm a big Excel guy. The business is not an Excel spreadsheet. It is not a model. It just isn't. So jump first, build your wings on the way down, because you're going to learn all the stuff that you don't even know that you don't know yet.
Wow. Alex, thank you so much for sharing that. Or I called you Alex. Sorry, Tim.
Okay.
Wow. I'm just flabbergasted. That I think just goes to show I just experienced something where whenever you put it out into the world, you'll receive it back. Right. So I've been kind of thinking about mulling over this idea. I've heard people, they want to buy their first real estate deal or their first mobile home park or their first mastermind, whatever it is. But they keep it inside themselves. But whenever you actually bring it out into the light, things will just start happening. And I honestly could have spent 6 months developing a mastermind that wouldn't have been quality or as good as how it will be following what you just said. And so just whenever you have an idea, folks, just bring it into light, because it's just crazy what'll happen. And Tim, the last question that I want to ask before getting to the final 3 is so you've had some tremendous success, and now looking back at that, has that truly made you happy? And if not, how have you found true happiness? Yeah.
So I believe in seasons of life. So my time at Gym Launch was the season of press. It was, we are strapped to a rocket ship. We have a limited window of opportunity. It is time to go. You got to strike while the iron's hot. Now, let's just use the sports analogy. We sprinted. A sprint is not a marathon. And where people fall, I think, and where I was getting, where I was setting myself up for was a set of continuous sprints, which would have left me exhausted. And so what I now believe, and I've put this out, and just to echo and I completely agree with, don't hold things inside, put them out. I believe that the next wave we're going to see is what I'm going to call kind of intention-based positioning, which is, here is who I am, here is what I believe, here is the world that I am creating, and if that sounds like something that you're interested in, I'm going to give you a way to be involved in my world. I actually put this out about 6 weeks ago. I put out an intention statement, and that was, here is what I believe, here is who I am, here is what I will accept, here is what I will not accept. And if that resonates with you, I'm the guy for you to talk to. And so the example of, you asked the question kind of like, what about true happiness? I have been chasing this idea of feeding my ego for a long time. And regardless of what your belief systems are, religious, otherwise, spiritual, I just believe that the less noise that you have in your life at points for reflection is a good thing. And so after my Gym Launch experience, I had to take 6 months off to finally go, why have I been running towards these things that I hold so dear in my head? Are they real, or are they kind of figments of my imagination? And this intention document was my way of crystallizing, here is the belief system that I have, here is what matters to me. I am a father of 3. I don't believe in long-term hustle and grind culture. I do believe in condensing my time and being around people that I love spending time with. And that has created, it has led to this idea of a world constructed around my zone of genius and the things that feed me from an energy perspective. But it also allows me to be the husband and the father that I want to be. And I think without that 6 months of kind of like real cutting through the noise or the vibration within me that was like, I could just keep doing the same thing, I wouldn't have come to those conclusions. And I think had I, in retrospect, if I had done that when I was 25, I probably would have saved myself 15 years of heartache. But better late than never.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can actually fall into that same bucket where I can almost be in busy work. And I feel like I need to just be busy to be busy. Because if I'm not doing something, then I'm not moving towards a goal, which is not always true. It can actually hurt you more to keep on moving, like you just alluded to. And Tim, we do have to start wrapping things down here. But before I ask you the final 3 questions, I just want to thank you so much for your time. I gained so much from this conversation myself, and I know the listeners will as well. So thank you very much for being here.
Of course. No, I'm happy to be here.
Well, Tim, the first question is a book recommendation for our listeners.
Well, I'm gonna carry the theme we were just talking about, which was about time. Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time is a phenomenal book, especially if you're early in your journey. It will fundamentally change how you perceive work and delegation and empowerment and things like that. So whether it be you managing your own time or having a team that you're trying to build, at some point we will all manage people. We do it every day in our lives. Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time, 100%. I've read it 3 times. It's sitting on my desk right here. It is a can't miss.
And Tim, if people want to learn more about you and maybe work with you, where's the best place that they can do that at?
Yeah, so Facebook and Instagram, I'm in my own DMs. So shoot me a note, send me Caleb in either of those channels, and I have a special gift for your listeners as well if they send me a note. So happy to help in any way I can. We've got I've got this kind of great world that I've constructed around me, and I welcome anyone. If anything I've said resonates, would love to have a chance to chat with you.
I love it. Well, I'm curious, so I'm going to type in Caleb after this phone call. And the last question is, if you can share one final thing with the listeners that they can take away from today's show, what would that be?
Understand your standards and never compromise them. The only reason why we run into trouble around ending up where we don't want to end up is because we become impatient or fearful. And as someone with a lot of scars and probably maybe a couple of more years of experience doing some things, anything is possible. Everything is available to you. But if you drop your standards, you'll never get there. So be intentional about where you want to end up, and then be ruthless in pursuing that goal.
Tim, thank you so much again for being here. And to the audience, I appreciate your time. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you later.
It's time to grab your victory. Find us on the web at redseacapitalgroup.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Red Sea Capital Group.